Good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Art and Wendy, for those kind words. On behalf of the Jerusalem Old City Initiative management team and the University of Windsor, I would like to thank the Middle East Institute for hosting today's event. We are also grateful to the Government of Norway and to the Canadian Department of Foreign Affairs for their generous financial support that made today's event possible. And we would especially like to extend our welcome and thanks to all of you for coming out this morning. As many of you will undoubtedly be aware, the Jerusalem Old City Initiative, which is housed in the Department of Political Science at the University of Windsor in Canada, is a Track 2 initiative which aims to find a sustainable governance solution for the Old City of Jerusalem, one of the most sensitive issues in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and arguably the most intractable. The purpose of today's event is to unveil the work of the initiative, discussing the special regime model and the proposals that the initiative has developed over the past 7 years. All of you should have received a copy of a booklet which contains 3 documents that explain how the special regime model might work. These are 1, the mandate elements for the Old City special regime, 2, the governance discussion document, and 3, the security assessment. Momentarily, the directors and the architects of the initiative, former Canadian ambassadors Michael Bell and Michael Malloy, and former Canadian diplomat John Bell, will be providing a succinct overview of the JOSI initiative, specifically discussing the process and the elements of the special regime proposal. This will be followed with a roundtable discussion with regional and international specialists. And following a coffee break, we look forward to an engaging discussion with the audience. Before turning things over to the chair of the panel, Ambassador Bell, I would like to stress that the initiative has benefited over the years from the input and expertise of numerous individuals and institutions, our international and regional partners. I would therefore now like to take this opportunity to recognize all of those who have lent us their support and have generously given of their time. You will find many of their names in the relevant sections of the booklet. However, others have preferred to remain anonymous. I am pleased to note that several contributors are in today's audience and would like to recognize them. Of course, there's Ambassador Art Hughes. Art was the principal author of the mandate paper, a principal author of the security assessment, and a contributor to the governance document. Art's long and distinguished career was described by Wendy. General John de Chastelain, who's up front here. General de Chastelain was a principal author of the security assessment. He was twice Canada's Chief of Defense Staff and served as Canada's ambassador to the United States. He was deeply involved in the Northern Ireland peace process, and he just completed his term as chair of the Independent International Commission on Arms Decommissioning in Northern Ireland. Roy Berlinquet. Roy was the 3rd principal author of the security assessment. He completed a 36-year career with the RCMP. He was also a member of the Office of the Oversight Commission for Reform of the Police Services for Northern Ireland. Dr. David Cameron was a principal author of the mandate paper and of the governance document. Dr. Cameron is professor and chair of the Political Science Department at the University of Toronto, and he was a former assistant deputy minister in the Government of Canada and a former deputy minister of intergovernmental affairs for the province of Ontario. And we have Jody White, who I don't believe has joined us or will be shortly. She was a member of the governance working group and a contributor to the governance document. Now, most of the members of the roundtable have contributed in important ways to the work of the Jerusalem Initiative. These include Nazmi Al-Juba. He's an expert on Jerusalem, a founder of the Rewalk Center for Architectural Conservation, and a former professor of Birzeit University. We have Marshall Brieger. Marshall Brieger was a member of the governance working group, and he made particularly valuable contributions to our work on holy sites and the legal system for the special regime. Professor Brieger is a Professor of Law at the Catholic University of America. We have Ambassador Daniel Kurtzer, who currently is the S. Daniel Abraham Visiting Professor in Middle East Policy at Princeton, and a former ambassador, a U.S. ambassador to Israel and Egypt. Danny Seidelman, who's an Israeli attorney and expert on Israeli-Palestinian relations in Jerusalem. Gilad Sher, former head of the Bureau and Policy Coordinator for Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Israel's co-chief negotiator at Camp David. And we are pleased to have on our panel Ghaith El-Omri. Welcome, Ghaith. I would also like to recognize in the presence in our audience Dr. Salim Tamari, who was a source of very wise advice and counseling to our initiative, and Laura Friedman, who helped us with the framing of the governance documents. And I'd also like to recognize Ambassador David Vivesh, a new member of our team, who's currently leading our efforts on property issues in the Old City. David. David has had a long career at the Canadian Foreign Service, with his last post being the Canadian representative to the Palestinian Authority. Before turning things over to our moderator and chair, Michael Bell, just a quick note on our funders and institutional partners. The initiative's principal funder has been the Canadian Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, but we have also received funding from the Canadian International Development Agency, CIDA, the International Development Research Centre, the Centre for International Governance Innovation, which is based in Waterloo, Ontario, Princeton University, and the University of Windsor. We've also received important contributions from Search for Common Ground, from Spain's Toledo International Centre for Peace, and the University of Toronto. Please note that the conclusions and the recommendations of the Old City Initiative do not necessarily reflect the views of our partners or funders and are the responsibility of the initiative's directors. I will now turn things over to today's moderator, Ambassador Michael Bell. Michael?